Iowa, Wisconsin there at the bottom. As Kyle brought out earlier, they'll play Michigan State if they can get past the Badgers, and then Ohio State awaits. They are on the same side of the draw as UCLA, and that's a very favorable draw for UCLA. Now, I know they're the 2 seed, but I'd rather be the 2 than the 1, Kyle, at least in my opinion. I think the Indiana-Oregon matchup is a more dangerous matchup than whoever wins the Nebraska-Rutgers game versus Illinois. Maybe I think it's very clear those 2 teams are the favorites to reach the semis, but I would anticipate, my point is I would anticipate the Bruins getting through and playing on Saturday. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, UCLA and USC to me are, like I said, by far and away the 2 best teams in the conference. So I wouldn't pick them to lose. I think that could be your conference championship right there. Even I think that would be my pick right now. Would be UCLA and USC in the championship, which isn't, it's probably a pretty boring take on my end, but yeah, I just think those 2 teams are significantly better than, just kind of similar to maybe Iowa the last couple of years. I know they didn't win the regular season crown, but when it came to Big Ten tournament time, Iowa found a way to win 3 of them in a row. And it just kind of seemed like once you got to that 3rd one last year, it was like, yeah, Iowa might face a couple of tough tests, but they're going to be the ones in the championship. I feel the same way about UCLA and USC. Like, yeah, they I don't think they're just going to cakewalk their way to the final, but I think if they both make, I think they would be the favorites to make it there right now. Would be those 2.
We've got somebody on our phone line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hi there. This is Chris from Detroit. Hey, I just wanted to say, it's been really fun to see the team progress so much over the course of the season. I know that's always going to be expected, but I think back to the debacle versus Tennessee where they literally threw the game away with the turnovers. And then I was at the Michigan State game where they had that in hand in the 4th quarter and then gave that away again. And so just to see them close out the season the way that they have, it's just been a delight to watch. And I'm just wondering from Kyle, what do you see for this team in the Big Ten tournament? Is there a chance that they could win this and shock everybody?
Well, I mean, certainly I think that it's always a possibility. I don't think that it will happen. I think that Iowa would run into, whether it's, obviously you'd have to beat Ohio. First, you'd have to beat Michigan State. Then you got to beat Ohio State and take, UCLA probably and maybe even USC then in the championship. So it would take something pretty special. I mean, Iowa can beat all those teams, whether they can do it 3 in a row in 3 days. I don't think they can do that. But to your point,
and that was kind of my follow up too. Like, does Iowa have the depth to make that kind of run, having to play back to back to back?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because we haven't seen Iowa play. They've had tough stretches this season, but obviously none of them were back to back to back in a 3-day stretch. I don't know if they do have the depth. You'd be calling on freshmen at a certain point to play, decent minutes. You'd probably run into foul trouble at some point. I don't know that Iowa has the depth to do a 3 games in 3 days, maybe like they have in the past. But a little bit to your point, I do think this team is dangerous enough to beat a Michigan State and then upset an Ohio State. And even if they don't get past the UCLA in the quarterfinal, to at least make some noise and pull an upset. I think the same thing in the NCAA tournament. They're going to be traveling to a top 3 seed, which is something they haven't done in quite a while. Iowa's hosted for many of the recent NCAA tournaments, but I think Iowa's, the way they're playing right now, they're certainly dangerous enough to pull an upset, maybe 2 at the Big Ten tournament, and then pull an upset over a host in the NCAA tournament. I think that's the level they're playing at right now. But yeah, I mean, it would be the rest of the Big Ten would probably hate Iowa if they went out and won a fourth Big Ten tournament in a row. But yeah, I just don't see. I mean, I think if you look at each of those matchups as they are, just a single game, I think Iowa can win any of them. I think they can beat anybody in the Big Ten. But to do 3 in 3 days would be I wouldn't pick that. I'm not even sure I'd pick them to do 2 in a row. But I do certainly think they're playing well enough to maybe upset an Ohio State in the quarterfinals if they were to get there. And a trip to the semifinals would easily lock up a spot as a 6 seed, and maybe even advance into a 5 seed at the NCAA tournament.
I agree. I don't. You're locked into the seedings tournament better than I am. Hearing that they could maybe get to a 5 without a tournament title, that surprises me. I'll defer to you on that. But we all know it. Tournament play, anything can happen. So UCLA and USC are clearly the 2 best teams in this conference. But as they have shown, there are chinks in the armor. And say Nebraska. Like I do think Nebraska is maybe a little bit more dangerous than their seed. Of course, they finished the same conference record as Iowa. They'll have to play Rutgers, then Illinois. I actually think Nebraska will end up playing UCLA. And I don't. You probably know what happened when those two teams played each other earlier in the year. But I would.
You want Illinois, Nebraska?
No. I'm saying UCLA, Nebraska.
Oh, UCLA, Nebraska. They played. Nebraska went to UCLA like that was like their first two. They went to UCLA and USC as their first two in Big Ten play. So it's been. Or shouldn't say their first two. I think it was like right at around the first of the year. They didn't win either of them.
They got bottled.
Yeah, but I think to your point, Nebraska can shoot the ball really well at times. Sometimes they don't. But if they make a load of threes, I mean, you can win any game if you make double-digit threes. So I think
they can. Nobody can deal with the size that UCLA has, but Alexis Markowski is a solid big that can at least hang down low. And I just wonder. That might be the matchup. If you're a Hawkeye fan and you're banking on Iowa to win the tournament, it is a hard. I agree with you. It's a hard ask to expect Iowa to go beat a Michigan State team that they lost to earlier this year, beat an Ohio State team that's been top 10 all year in the country, and then beat UCLA. But if Nebraska or Illinois could come through and somehow shock the Bruins, then if you're Iowa, you've become the favorite at that point to at least make it to the championship game. And I also wondered this was a comment earlier in our chat that didn't even enter my mind. Maybe other people have thought about this, but Kayla brings up the Caitlyn Clark effect. What's your anticipation here? Because it's the first year we've seen an Iowa game, an Iowa trip to Indianapolis for Big Ten tournament play since Caitlyn Clark was drafted to the Fever. Is there going to be an impact there because of all the Fever fans that are locked into Caitlyn Clark's career? Do you think those people will show up to the tournament?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it could. I'm curious to see just because, like, the last couple of years, Iowa fans really showed up, but also Iowa was, like, the favorite to win the tournament. So you're more likely to travel to Minneapolis or to Indianapolis if you feel like Iowa's going to make a run and you can be there a couple of days. So, maybe if there's some people that don't want to take the chance of, being only there a couple of days. But I think Iowa fans will travel. How much that'll matter, I mean, I don't know. It'll help. I don't know. Like I said, I still don't think they win, multiple games in multiple days to do something like that. And to be honest, they don't need to. Like they don't. Their goal was to kind of get out of that 7 to 10 range of the NCAA tournament. So you beat Michigan State in that second round. To me, that locks up the 6th seed at the NCAA tournament. And then after that, anything is just kind of extra momentum for the NCAA tournament.
Or are they a 7 seed if they beat Wisconsin again and then lose to Michigan State? Are they a 7?
I don't think so. I would think they would still be a 6 seed, but I think it would be close. Like if they lost to Michigan State,
what if they lose to Wisconsin? What if they lose to Wisconsin game 1? They
would not be a 6 seed in my opinion.
This is a huge game against Wisconsin. I mean, people are just penciling this game as a win.
Oh, it's really the same as today. That you just it's kind of a. I don't even know how you want to say it. I'm not going to make a big deal about, it's a must win, but it is. It's just kind of that you have to know it going in. They do need to beat Wisconsin on Wednesday. I think if they lost to Michigan State, it'd be right there. Like you couldn't argue either way. If they were 6, you'd say, yeah, like that's fine. If they were 7, you'd say, yeah, I mean, that makes sense as well. That's why I said if they were to beat Michigan State, I think that would lock up the 6th seed at the NCAA tournament, which to me, then, if you beat an Ohio State, fine. I think it's a lot harder to get to a 5 seed. I think you'd have a shot then if you beat Ohio State, but I just don't. I mean, the difference between a 4 and a 3 seed isn't, to me, the difference between playing a 4 and a 3 seed at the NCAA tournament isn't quite as dramatic as the 2 to 3. Just because I think your teams that you would consider to be potential to make a run to the Final Four is your 1s and 2 seeds. I think there are three seeds that are good. But I think there's a definite gap between the 2 and 3 seeds where there's not as big of a gap between the 3 and the 4 seeds, in my opinion. So I don't, people obviously want to win a 4th Big Ten tournament. I don't really think that's a realistic thought, in my opinion. I think the bigger goal is just go win a couple of games, keep the positive momentum going into the NCAA tournament, and have at least a good showing going into the NCAA tournament.
For game 1, a rematch against these very Badgers on Wednesday night. Again, that game will be at 7:30 p.m. Central Time on Peacock. Yes, it's the vaunted Peacock. Once again, I know people don't like that, but they do a good job of covering the sport. So I do appreciate them for that reason. Iowa locked in as the 11 seed in the Big Ten tournament, and Wisconsin the 14 seed. Wednesday, approximately 7:30 p.m. Central Time on Peacock.